Hi guys, welcome back to Tie TV. I'm Niklaus Bauer, and today we're going to tie a 10-year anniversary fly, I would call it. I think it was 10 years ago we dropped the fly on Canal Gratis webpage and also on YouTube called the Hoover fly. It was basically a single hook fly at that time, and it had a foam head as the front of the fly. So I designed this pattern for where the burbot, small burbot from the ocean, is coming up into the river mouth to spawn, and the big pike is standing there. So I wanted a fly that was quite simple to cast, but we're not sinking down at all. So it was supposed to be a hook fly, and as soon as I stopped it, it was just supposed to stand there. So this was 10 years ago. I actually had a nice 10-kilo fish on that fly, exactly on those circumstances. So it was really cool. That pattern is long gone nowadays, but what we're going to tie now is going to be a modern version of that fly. Instead of having the popper head in front, we're going to have it incorporated into the fly, because the whole idea is still there. We're going to tie the fly on a Bauer pike rig. We're going to tie it on a 4.0 with a 1.0 as a stinger, or not a 1.0, with a size 1 stinger. But we're going to incorporate this head inside the fly here, which is going to make this fly be perfectly balanced in the water. So when you retrieve this fly, and with dragon tail in back, because this is a little bit floating, and it's supposed to actually stand really good in the water with a Fastach size 3 and a 50 centimeter wire trace. So what I want with this fly is you can fish it, and if you stop it, it's supposed to be standing like this in the water. Not sinking down and not kind of doing anything stupid, just standing very still. And if it's sinking, it should slowly sink like this. Because there's so many places where you want to have a tube fly, which is keeping that same level profile as you stop it, but you want that fly to be able to jerk it so it really swims side to side, or a much more aggressive movement than you can have with a tube fly. So I want that fly to be able to standing exactly like this. And then this color is, we call it in Sweden, or actually this is like a silver bream, but it has a quite cool story, because this is, we call it a diskflugan. So I tied a fly like this, and I changed it for doing the dishes on a fishing trip. And so I tied a fly like this. I gave it to my friend who took the dishes instead, and he had a really nice 11-kilo fish on that fly the day after. So it has a little bit story. It's a really, really nice color combination. It's dark in the front, silver in the back, good contrast, a really, really good pattern. So it's not that hard to tie, but it's some small tricks we need to work out here. So Hoover fly 2.0, stay tuned. So once again, Bauer pike rig, Universal X Partridge, size 4.0, the Partridge Intruder, size 2. We don't have to do really big stinger hooks, but they're very, very important when you're fishing a tail. There's so many times that the fish just goes for the tail because it's sending out so much noise in the water. They're picking up with their ladder line, and it's just so bright, so you can see most of the takes are actually right at the end of the fly here. So fishing flies like this without a stinger, that's something I don't do at all, because I'm just losing too many fish. So a stinger doesn't have to be big. Size 2 is good enough. I'm gonna put it into the device here. This is already pre-made, so if you don't know how to tie it, you can click on the link up in the corner here, and you will find the description for the Bauer pike rig, so you can tie it. I usually make up a whole bunch, so I don't have to start the fly by tying the rig. We're gonna use some glue as normal, just a drop there. As normal, I'm tying with the Textreme 100 denier, really strong, durable thread, never lets you down. So we're gonna go in there with the thread. Make sure I'm on the 100 denier here. Yep. So what we want to do here is we want to do a bucktail collar. We want to do it normal tied, and we want to cover that with silver, so we get that really silver color to the fly in the tail. So we're just going to run normal bucktail, and we're going to run white, so nothing fancy with that. Try to find a nice bucktail when you go to the shop that has long, straight fibers, and also it contains some hair, so it's not too short and too kind of wrinkled or curvy, because then it usually is very soft, and that's more for the salmon guys. We want that it's a little bit stiffer. It holds air. It's hollow. That's why it's a little bit stiffer. That's gonna make, when you tie it in, it's gonna flare so much better. So there we go. You want this, these tips to cover the fast attach and just be like a centimeter longer than that. So get the material all around the hook like that. Good. Come back here. So get it spread in evenly around. Make 1, 2, 3 turns, and then you pull. If you do it, if you have chosen the right bucktail, it's going to flare out like this. So you can see you get a nice spread. And these short fibers, they are really sticking straight out like a hedgehog. So then you put the hair clamp over here. A lot of people ask me what type of hair clamps this is. Well, I buy these in Sweden in the grocery store, but the brand is Babyliss. And what I like with these is that they're really round like that. So when you grip the material, they're straight and round. And you can use like these small clamps that comes on flowers and stuff like that, but they don't make that round center point like that, which I think is really good with the fly tying. But at least that's what I buy much too often. Not sponsored. Have to pay full price, expensive like crazy they are too. So Babyliss, I'm open for suggestions here, guys, if you want to do a campaign. Not. So we cut all the small hairs away. We go around here. We take the fibers that are on the belly. We try to get those around so we have a nice and even spread. We take a hair clamp so we get everything out of the way. We're gonna run Magnum Flashabou from Hedron in the tail. We're gonna run a few normal strands too, but basically mostly Magnum because it doesn't tangle and it gets that really good reflections in the tail of what I want. So I want it to be kind of a flash tail. So we're gonna run 3 colors. We're gonna run Magnum Mirage, Magnum Silver, and Magnum Holographic Silver. So, of course, it's always up to you how many strands you do, but I'm gonna do around 5 of each. I think that's gonna be quite good. If I don't drop all of them here. It feels like I already dropped half of these guys, so. What the hell? And then holographic 5 strands. Gonna put them on a pile. That didn't look that professional. So. But that's how it is. So just pull these long ones out. Kind of reposition them a little bit. So we have a bunch here, around 15 strands. Make sure we had one that was a little bit too long here. I put them so they're nice and even here. So we fold that together as normal. Divide it into half. And we put it together. We taper those ends as normal, just so we get a nice and tapered tail. We make sure that they are mixed, but usually when we're not doing more strands than 15, they usually mix up quite nice in the hand like that. So try to spread them evenly around here. And then if you can, you tie them in at once. Otherwise you just make a few bunches. Depends on how you feel and how confident you are in your tying. So then we just kind of fold them over, compress it with your thumb a little bit. And we make a few turns. And I should have been less confident in my tying, I can say here, because I didn't get that good spread. But we'll have to work with, we have to live with that. So, and then we're gonna do a little bit or a few strands of normal Flashabou. So we're gonna run holographic silver, and we're gonna run a few strands of just plain old great Flashabou. So we're on 15 strands again. You can take a comb here and run it through them so it gets a little bit better mixture. Make sure that the ends are tapered, like that. And I'm gonna tie that in. And I like to tie it in around 50-50 now. So 50% in the tail and 50% in towards the hook eye. So try to spread them around like that. Gonna fold those fibers. And then we're gonna work all the way back with the thread here. So we have a nice and strong position. So there we go. So the flashy tail is done. It's going 2 to 3 centimeters longer than Fastach, which usually becomes quite a nice distance for then the tail when it's kind of stretched out a little bit becomes nice and incorporated into the fly. This is on the borderline of a little bit too long here. Can be like a centimeter shorter, but if the fibers are too long, they start interfering with the tail, and that's not a good situation. So when you stretch it out, the fibers should start or should stop at the first point of the dragon tail here. But if you have a few tails, you can always just go in and, or a few fibers, you can always go in and cut them off. So it's not a problem. So the tail is done. Once again, put the hair clamp over. Put a drop of super glue here, so we make sure that this is nice and strong. We're gonna run a body material called Polarflash. Good stuff from Hairline. We're not gonna using that big of a piece because we're gonna have mostly, the body is gonna be a double barrel popper. So just need a short piece. We tie it in as normal. So we go forward a little bit. Then you take one of these. This is a double barrel. It's a popper, but it's also working really well as a diver. This is the size medium. We want to paint these, and we're also going to make the hole in this. But I pre-made one because when the paint is a little bit wet, you cannot really play around with them. So I'm going to show you. But first, we basically need to figure out where we want this. For the balance sake, with the tail and everything like that, you want it to be as close to the tip as possible. But on the other hand, you need to have some space to work here. You need to be able to do another Bucktail collar. You need to do some materials, but you need to have 7 to 8 millimeters of space there. If you're not so used to tying, leave a little bit more space. So, but we're going to try to run around 8 millimeters here. So we're not going to pre-rig this one first, but the important thing is 8 millimeters here. So then you need to know where are you going to end it here. I usually put my thread where I need to end it, and then I take a marker and I just make a line there, so I know what I'm gonna wrap this body material here, and then I'm done. So that's what I'm gonna do. Fold, use your left hand to fold the fibers backwards the whole time, so you get a nice and even body. We are going to wrap it 1 or 2 millimeters longer. Then you put the line here, because we're going to press this onto it. So, but at least we know where to stop here. And tie this off 3 times behind it, a few times, and 1 more behind it, so we make a nice stop. So we're done with that. We have the tail and we have the body. So now we're going to make the hole in this. They have pre-made a hole in the front, but we need to make a hole in the back. So what I usually do is I take the dubbing needle. I usually do this against my stomach. So I put it in the hole here and I try to get this out in the middle here somewhere as straight as possible. Which I didn't succeed really well there. It's good that I pre-made one, so I get it out like that. Nice and centered. Push it down, kind of make the hole a little bit bigger. Then I take one of my tying tools, which has a little bit thicker stem, and I kind of go through in the same hole here. So I make that a little bit long, a little bit bigger, the hole. So it's still nice and centered. You don't want this hole to be too much up here, because you want to have this area here. The whole idea with this is I can pull this off and I put it on the hook and I can show you. See if we can get it on here without putting it in the vise. So come on, a little bit more. There we go. So, crucial things here, or key things. You want this foam body to be as close to the hook shank as possible, because you don't want to decrease the area between this head here and the point here too much, because then you're going to have very poor hookup rates. So this distance here needs to be as big as possible. That's an important thing. And then the balance. If you put it like this, usually the balance becomes very, very good. And you can always try it in a bowl of water, but put the tail on and the leader on so you get that right balance, depending what kind of hook you're using, what size of hook you're using. So you can always pre-do this like the guys who's doing wooden baits. And then you need to color this. I have already made one here because the paint takes a little bit time to dry, but I'm just gonna color this a little bit brown here, because otherwise it's going to be quite visible through the hair when it becomes wet. So that's what you want to do, something like that. But like, this is like a cooking show now, so it's already done. What we need to do now is go with the thread all the way to the front. Or you can do a whip finish, like that. Cut the thread off. And now we push this onto the hook here. It can be a little bit tricky the first time. So now it's on. I can see that the hole is not 100% perfect on this one, but we'll still have to live with that one. Pull it off a little bit, and then here we don't need to use epoxy or anything like this, because it's so tight and it just becomes so strong. And I've glued these with super glue the whole time, and they never come off actually. So, and then we just make sure that we push this back, have the area we need in the front here, make sure it's nice and level. And we actually need to add some color because it has a tendency to come off, even if we pre-did it, but at least we got the right. So as you can see, this hole came a little bit too far down, but we still have a lot of space here, but it's important to get that. So now we have to continue with the front of the fly here. Put a drop of super glue again, so we can have something to attach the thread in. So if you haven't tied too many of these and you're a little bit of a beginner, leave a little bit more space here. But the thing is, we are not going to have too much material here. We're basically going to run Bucktail, some Nayat, some Flash, and a head of Predatordubbing. So we don't need that much space. The thing here is you don't want this Bucktail color to come too much forward, because then you're going to run out of space. Once again, nice quality Bucktail. This is a brown one. Use the fibers that are closest to the lower section of the Bucktail, because it has much more air inside of it. It's hollow. So I'll take a nice piece here. Take most of the short fibers out. Whoops. We're gonna measure this so it's not too long. We don't want these, if you have really good Bucktail in one color, we don't want these tips here to be too long, but this is good, so I'm gonna run this. Here's a little bit tricky now. Try to get the thread as close to the head as possible, but it can be a little bit tricky here to kind of get this material to spread around the hook, so it doesn't always go on the first try, but let's give it a shot here. Try to hold it, try to get it around a little bit, and then when you pull the thread towards the hook point so it doesn't come to the right here. Make a turn, one more turn, and then put some pressure to it. Then we can get this flare and the nice rise of the Bucktail as close to the popper head as possible. It's not that strange that if you need to add some fibers to the belly here, because it's very easy that we cannot really get that Bucktail all around it. So it's not a mistake, it's actually more common that it is that case than not. But we just add a few strands here. Put it right in the center. Grip the material there, a few turns. Work towards the popper head. Oops. Like that. So nice and tight. Take the hair clamp here and try to cut these as close to the popper head as possible, because you're going to get so much volume of this in any case. And that's also a good thing with having this popper head here behind it, that it really increases the volume, just like you do with the magic head. But this has the floatability that we're looking for the buoyancy in this pattern. So nice and spread, as you can see. We have it all around the hook shank here, so we're good to go. Take your reverse tool, like a pen or whatever you want to, run it back, and now it's a little bit more tricky here because you cannot really grip the material as you're used to, so you kind of need to compromise and find a way to do it. We have a nice spread here, so we're just going to go with the thread straight forward, and then we're going to make some support here for the Bucktail. Then we can release that. So we can see we have quite a spread here. We need to work this a little bit so it folds a little bit further back. Push it a little bit so it gets in the right direction. So we're getting the angle there. I think I'll be happy with that one because we're going to dress this with quite a lot of material here, so it's going to eventually fold down a little bit more. Make a few turns, a drop of glue. So now we have around 5 millimeters here. to work with, which should be plenty, depending on how you're going to attack this next. But now we're going to run a mixture of basically some Flashabou, some premium Nayat, and Predatordubbing and some ripple ice. So it's not going to be super heavily dressed, but it's still going to be, you need to have that weight so we get the balance in the front there. So we're going to run 4 different Flashabou. We're going to run 2 Polarflash, a really nice old copper, old gold. We're going to run a copper mix. We're going to run a holographic normal Flashabou in brown, and then Flashabou, a normal one in copper. So we're going to run 5-6 strands of each, or what you prefer. Usually we kind of have a tendency to lose 1 or 2 strands when you mix them, so you can always take 1 or 2 too many. Put them on the table, make a nice bunch here. Put them up in between your fingers. Take a comb. So when you want to mix these together and you're running the Polarflash, take the wider side of your comb, because they have a little bit hair mixed in these fibers. So if you go too thin, they have a tendency to tangle a little bit. So it's better to run the wider side of the comb. So now we have a nice mix, as I want here. So we are going to tie this in, and we are going to tie it in 50-50. So we're going to try to nice and evenly spread this all around here. We're actually on this size 4, or we can actually shorten this a little bit, because we don't want those fibers to be too far back. So just shorten it a little bit here, because you won't want these fibers to be the same length as the one in the tail, basically. So nice and evenly spread. Try to get a good grip of this. 1 turn. Try to spread it nice. Work with your thread towards the bucktail. And then try to fold those back. Try to make a nice and good spread of those. Like that. Just have to work with the thread a little bit here so we get a nice and slick surface, so it's not too bulky. So now we have the first Flashabou there. We're gonna continue holding the clamp over here. I'm gonna put a little bit glue on this, like this, so it's becomes a strong fly. And then we're gonna run some Nayat. It's a really nice natural hair, has a nice taper, and it also looks beautiful in the water. This is worked with quite a bit. That's why it's called a premium. It goes through with a comb 2-3 times, and you also put a special material inside of it, so it becomes soft and just swims beautiful. So that's why the premium in it. Try to get most of the under fur away. And when you're working with this material, try not to put it into a bunch. Like, try to keep the volume open. Then you're going to have a very simple way to tie it in. So don't compress it too much. Try to keep it nice and spread like this. So we're not going to running this too far here, so we want to make sure that these tips are in the borderline where the Flashabou were ending. So we're going to make a nice spread once again with this. Oops. Try to make a nice even spread around here. I think like that is going to be good. And then just push it back towards the head. So, nice and tight. Put the hair clamp on again. Put a little bit of pressure on the thread here. And before we get to the hook eye, we want to cut all the existing material off here. It will be a little bit bulky here, but it's going to be quite nice when we cover this with Predatordubbing and some ripple eyes. So now you can see we don't have basically any Nayat on the belly here, which I don't want, because I want to cover that with copper ripple eyes, because I don't want two of these long fibers on the belly, because it just has a tendency to tangle. So we want to keep it a little bit open like this and not too much material on the belly, because it's just going to build up too much volume here and you're going to have problems with the hooking rate instead. So keep it as nice and tidy as possible on the belly. So we're going to run some super glue here again. So we make this really strong. And then we are going to run two different kinds of ripple eyes here. We're going to run copper on the belly, so we get that really bright, flashy throat. And then we're going to run Peacook on the back. And we're also going to run a few strands of this into the Predatordubbing, just to get a really cool kind of ripple ice effect into the Predatordubbing. But first, we're going to put quite a lot of this onto the collar here. So we pull a bunch of fibers out, like you see. This is the amount, which is pretty good. But you can play around, of course, depending on how much space you have here. I'm going to flip this around, tie it in around 70% towards the tail, and the rest 30% to the hook. So try to spread it around the belly here, where we don't really have too much Nayat. And we're going to fold those fibers over, lock it in place. So we have that really like a copper belly. And then we're going to run some Peacock on the top here. Just to get that really nice shimmer. Oops. And we also tie that in 70-30. Fold those fibers over. And basically what we have left now is some Predatordubbing and two eyes, and we are almost there. So as you can see now, we have a bright copper belly and a little bit darker, really nice peacock back. So once again, hair clamp. Try to cut all these short ripple eyes that are interfering with our future tying here. Try to make this area here a little bit more even, so it's easier to lay out the Predatordubbing. And once again, some super glue. So, Pear Dubbing, something I think most of you guys are familiar with today. This is a really cool color called J.K. Craw. It's a color we actually made for the crayfish patterns, but it's really fluorescent. And when you put it into the fly, it's almost like a motor oil color, but this is orange instead of yellow. So it, together with those small glow-in-the-dark eyes, it becomes really cool. So the first bunch we're going to tie in here, we're not going to use any ripple eyes. We're just going to pull these fibers straight from the bag, holding the fibers from the bag so you can get them very easily out like that. So we make a nice carpet here. Trying to gently tie this in. There's one nice turn. Tie it in a little bit more to the end here. So this is 60 back and around 40 in the front. But what you want to do is a little bit longer, so when we fold it, it makes a nice taper to it. So once again, try to grip the material with the thread, tighten it, and then make a few tight turns so it stays in place. Make sure that we have materials all around the hook, which it seems to be quite nice. This is just the first bunch. The next one is a little bit more crucial. Comb those fibers towards you. Make them nice and evenly spread around the hook eye. Fold them back. I like to tighten them like once over those fibers. And the second one we do not tie over. We just work around with the comb there a little bit. So you can see you have a lot of volume now, which is going to stay like this until you get it into the water the first time. Then you got to get a little bit more slimmer profile, but this is going to create a lot of water pressure, and that's really good because that's actually what we want here. So just a little bit drop of super glue here onto the thread, so we have a strong finishing here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to lay out a carpet here on the table with this J.K. Craw. Not going to be a super heavy bunch, but it's going to be quite a lot. And we're going to put some ripple eyes in copper here. Actually, just for the sake of it, we're going to put a few strands of Peacook too, just to get that little bit kind of pearl touch to it. Just roll this together here. So burrito. Try to get these fibers like into the material, so we have a nice carpet like that where it's mixed into. And then we're going to tie this in 50-50. So we're doing one gentle turn here, trying to get the fibers all around, and then nice and tight like that. Fold them backwards. Looks good. Comb them a little bit before we get the final push backwards here. So a nice and even spread there. We're going to take our brown marker here, color the thread brown, put some super glue onto it, because now we only need a few thread wraps here to lock everything in place. make a few turns, and we just cut it off. So there we have a nice and tight head. So we're just gonna glue the eyes on here, and basically the fly is ready. So on these flies, I like to run a little bit smaller eyes than I do on the normal flies. This is usually 9 or 11 millimeters, but these are 5.5, and that's mostly for getting the right balance to the fly. Because if you put too big eyes and too much weight in the front, we're not going to get that really good balance. So I run 5.5 millimeter ones. This is glow in the dark, which makes a little bit, I don't know, I started tying this pattern with this, and it's been fishing so well, so I haven't finished tying them with something else than that. So that's what we're going to put on. We're going to use as normal epoxy, which is important, so they're really strong. So this is 5 minutes epoxy. Just becomes really strong, durable, and if you just use it the right way, it's quite simple to work with. We're just going to put equal amount of hardener and resin. Mix it together. And as you know, when you mix it together, it becomes like murky, and then it becomes clear. Then the epoxy is ready to use. And now we have like a minute of working time, so you cannot chalk too much. So what you want to do here is, I like to put some water on my fingers to kind of get all the short fibers here that are kind of sometimes sticking up and going to interfere with your epoxy. Try to get those away, and then push my hand down, and we're gonna put some epoxy here, which is really usually sucking down into this material really well, and it becomes really strong. I'm gonna go on the other side, do the same thing there. Can actually use the dubbing needle to push the epoxy down to it. Just have to be a little bit careful, so you're not picking too many fibers up, which can be a little problem for you later. So there we go. And these are a little bit small, so what I usually do with smaller eyes, these are on the borderline, but I put the finger under it, push my dubbing needle under it, so I have it sticking on the dubbing needle. And then, well, hard to show, but I usually just push it to the hook here, like that, and then normally you just kind of fold it into the glue, but it's a little bit hard with these small eyes. But try to get the try to get this side of the eye kind of leaning to the hook eye, and kind of like, oops, it's hard with these. Kind of just fold it into the wet glue, and you're gonna have a very strong and durable head here. So I'm just gonna put a clamp over this just for like 2 minutes. So as soon as this epoxy becomes much more sticky and on the way to becoming hard, I release this clamp so we can just widen it a little bit. And after that, a few drops of UV resin. So this is gonna take 2 minutes, and while we wait for this to cure, you can watch some cool pike footage showing pike attacking flies like this. Enjoy. So I hope you enjoyed some pike action there. So this is basically done now. We glued the eyes. We actually forgot to take the clamps off in time, but it turned out good in any case. So what we're going to do now is going to put some UV glue here to kind of finish this off. And that's just so we get a little bit more slicker head and also a little bit more durable head. So Gulff Thin Man, thin, strong, hard resin, really good stuff. We're just gonna kind of push it a little bit over here. This is a very thin viscosity to it. That means that it's quite rinny, or it goes into the material really well. So we're just gonna go one thin layer here first, which is just gonna kind of go into the material, suck it in a little bit. And then the second coat is gonna be a little bit more for show. So that was the first layer. And the second one is gonna be for the finish. So it looks nice and sleek. As you can see, I'm not putting a lot of this on, I'm just putting some. So we have a nice and strong head. And now we can also see when I'm curing the light here, or curing the resin, how orange this fly is actually turning. So that's all done. So there we go. There's the Overfly 2.0. Needs to go in the water so it becomes really nice, but a very good fly. If you want great balance, you want to have a hook fly that you can stop and it's not going to sink down. So give it a try. Really good pattern. So as normal, guys, we're going to give this fly away. So leave a comment, and the guys and girls from Canal Garters is going to send you this fly. Good luck, guys.
Not to all of you, though.
Not to all of you, but one of you.